What's up, you guys? We are back with another episode of Who Even Asked. I'm Tay.
And I'm Jazz.
And today we're going to be going over the docuseries that we recommended for you guys last time, Anatomy of Lies.
Yep. And I finished it yesterday. Tay is the one that actually told me to watch it. And I will have to say, it was super interesting. I don't think we're going to get into it, right now. But, because there's a couple other things we want to talk about.
Yes.
But just look forward to that because it's going to be a crazy, crazy ride.
Yes. So if you want to pause and go watch that before finishing this episode, now's your final chance.
We'll wait.
Yes. So what did you want to bring up first today?
Yeah, so I know you had wanted to talk about the finance TikTok couple.
Yes. I don't know if you'd seen this, or I think I sent it to you, but I didn't know if you'd seen it circulating on your algorithm or anything. But basically, I think his name is Caleb Hammer, and he has a finance podcast. And different people will go on there and he'll analyze their finances and, tell them what they're doing wrong and all that. Well, there's one couple from Houston was on there, and husband made pretty good money. He was in the oil industry and he made about $120 a year. And the wife was a part-time flight attendant, and she, wasn't bringing in a ton. She's part-time. She takes care of their kids most of the time. But their finances were insane. Their spending was just crazy. And she kept taking out loans to pay off her other debts. And it was just this giant snowball of debt. Yes, yeah. It was crazy. But when I was watching that, and if y'all hadn't seen that, y'all should go watch it because it was crazy. But I was going to say, how much do you think is too much, or what is the point where couples who share finances should ask, or not even necessarily ask, but should discuss this purchase before they do it? You know what I mean? Maybe $5, obviously you don't need to consult your partner on, but what do you think is that dollar amount that couples, and I guess it's relative to every relationship is different and depends on how much money you have, but you personally, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think probably like you said, it's just dependent on what your partner makes, what you make.
Right.
So for me, if my partner was probably making the same amount of money as I was, $200.
Okay, that's fair.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not too high, but it's not too low.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think though one person can handle, and I'm sure we're probably gonna get into this in a second, the finances. I don't think it's right, if you're both making money, for somebody to have to ask permission for to an extent.
Yeah.
For things.
No, I can agree with that. And I think it's interesting. Everybody's different financial outlooks in relationship. There are a lot of couples, who they might have a joint account for bills and then they each have their own personals. Some couples, they only have their joint. Some couples, I'll pay X, Y, and Z bill, you pay X, Y, and Z bill, and then we'll just keep it completely separate. I just think that's interesting, the different dynamics that couples have. Me and Jacob, we share all our finances. So I think we more so might be the ones to kind of talk about a big purchase before we do that, because we kind of already do that. We kind of talk about what we're spending and stuff. For me, I think $100, maybe, if we were more rich.
I was going to say that too. I was going to say 100, but I felt like I was going too low. I'm always afraid people are going to judge me. So I was okay, maybe 200, but no, I think 100 too. Honestly, that's a decent amount. That's a good chunk of change.
But if I don't know, if we were in that couple's financial space where they were making that much, I would say maybe 500.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that seems right. But I don't know. I just want to get you guys' opinion also. If y'all want to, comment, write in, let us know what y'all think the correct quote unquote answer is. I just think it's an interesting topic.
So let me ask you this too. So do you believe everything should be split down the middle directly or in accordance to how much you make each?
I think it depends on how much each person makes. If one person is making, $100,000 a year and the other person's only making $30,000 a year, I don't think, and let's say their mortgage is $1,000 I don't think that the person making $30,000 a year should have to pay $500 and the other person pay $500. In my opinion, the person making more should pay that bill entirely, and the person making less could maybe, you know, pay the electric bill or get groceries, stuff like that. I think as long as you're both contributing, and it's also different, like what y'all are comfortable with.
Yeah.
That guy in that episode, he had mentioned, you know, you don't have to work. Like, I make enough, you don't have to. You just need to chill on your spending. So I think it's all the different comfort levels of the relationship.
And then she was talking, but I remember I seed her. I remember seeing the video, and she was talking about like all this spending $600 at Target.
Yeah.
And like, he was like, I don't remember if it was the finance guy, but he was like, oh, you can return stuff, you know? And she's like, why would I return it? Or like, no, I'm not going to return it.
Yes.
But she just comes off very bratty.
And entitled.
For
Absolutely.
sure. And people in the comments were like, wow, we thought he was making like $1 million, not like 100,000. Like,
yes.
Because 100,000 is a lot of money, but like not for a family, and not like, it's not as much money as you think.
It's not as much money as it used to be, I would say. I think that used to be like plenty for, you know, a wife to stay at home or partner, whatever, you know. But it's fine that she doesn't want to work because he is okay with that. But if you want to spend like that, you need to work more. But they make enough money. She could arguably like get a nanny, and she could go work more. Yeah. If she wants to spend like that. Spending is fine if you have the means to do so. But when you're taking out of your, you know, emergency rainy day fund to go buy, he kept calling them trinkets. I want to know what the trinkets were that he was referring to. Yes. And she had like a Pottery Barn credit card, just like all the things. Yeah. But yeah, so let us know, guys. What you think is the right answer?
Yeah, I mean, finances are always just so sticky. I know people who do it so many different ways. But I think the most common way, like I've only been in one like super long-term relationship where I've had to split like bills with somebody. And at that point we did it according to how much each of us made. And then, like, I think she paid maybe like a portion of the rent, but like not a lot of it. And then some of the smaller bills, and then I paid some of the smaller bills too. But like, yeah, I definitely think it's about how much you make each and kind of splitting it accordingly, because it's no fair to somebody if, you know, you're making, like you said, 100,000 or whatever, and they make 30, and then they have no money left over to do anything, and then it just becomes this like snowball of having to ask people for money, and like feeling like it can create a lot of problems.
No, for sure. And that's why I guess a lot of people say that finances are one of like the leading causes of divorce. Yeah. I think it can definitely become like a sticky situation for people, and the couple in that the podcast I was referring to definitely, I think, could fall under that, in my opinion.
Could definitely see that for sure. I did want to, speaking of couples. Okay. So, you know, I've been back on the Tinder. Okay. And I just wanted to point out this one thing. First of all, I hardly get on the Tinder. I sound so freaking old.
You sound old. Oh anytime somebody puts in front of anything, it's giving old person.
But what's funny is I did it to try and be ironic at first. That's such a millennial thing of me to do.
No, literally.
And then I just started. I didn't mean to say it twice. It just came out.
Anywho, you're on the app.
I'm on that. Only one app, Tinder.
Okay.
And I just, I really don't put that much time into it. But I noticed, because it's like, oh, these people liked you. And in order to see who liked you, like, unless you match, it's $40 a month for Tinder Plus or whatever it's called. It is ridiculous. And then there's other add-ons. I think something's like $19 a week. For like, I'm like, who's paying for this?
I have friends and clients who pay for this. I did not realize y'all were spending that much on that.
That is crazy. Yeah, I could never do that. Like, I'm just too cheap to do that, I guess, maybe. But like, I've thought about it once. One time I did a free trial. Okay. And like, it wasn't like that great, so I didn't want to do it again. But then I got another free trial, but I didn't realize that like, after you've used your one, it starts charging you. So it said free and it was not free. But yeah, I just saw the prices and I was like, I can understand $10.
Sure.
That's $5, $10, $15 maybe.
20 max.
40 a month? is wild. That's astronomical.
That's more than Netflix, and Netflix is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and if I'm paying $40 a month, better be getting like the top notch matches here,
right? Like, are you bump up my algorithm?
Right? Are you gonna teach me how to write my profile? Like, what is going on?
AI generates your Tinder profile
for $15 a month.
But that's the only add-on you're getting is you can see who likes you first.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that's Tinder Plus, so I don't know what that all includes.
Okay.
But, like, I know, so I'm looking it up right now for the people that are listening. So, like, if I go to my likes and I press see who likes you for 1 month, so I guess you could do it for 1 month, it's $10 a week. For 1 week, it's $13.99 a week. And then for 6 months, it's $5.83 a week, which I guess isn't as bad, but $5 a week, that's still kind of like...
And why are you planning on being on Tinder for 6 months?
So for this, you get unlimited likes, see who likes you, unlimited rewinds, which I guess means you can go back if you accidentally swiped on somebody, 1 free boost per month, and I think that like boosts your profile in front of everybody. 3 free super likes per week, unlimited passport mode. I think that's you can go anywhere in the world. So if I wanted to meet somebody in like Ireland, I could. I guess
that's giving catfish.
Yeah. Top picks. Which they give you like top picks of like who they think is most compatible with you or whatever.
Okay.
And then control who sees you, control your profile, and control who you see. And then hide ads, but I really don't get
Okay,
ads.
that first one you said, unlimited likes. I thought you could like as many people as you wanted on there.
No. You only get a certain amount of likes.
Oh.
Yeah. But I don't have to worry about that here because Lubbock is so small that I literally, that's another reason I just don't get on it is because like there's like nobody there.
No new options.
And let's talk about unicorns real quick. Do you know what a unicorn is?
Doesn't that mean they're like 1 in a million? But like, what does that mean?
No. So, a unicorn specifically when it comes to dating apps is, basically there's a couple who first, this is what's dirty about this. They'll put the girl's picture first.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You'll think it's just a girl. And then you swipe through the pictures and you see this man in there. And then I'm like, oh, it's a freaking unicorn situation. Scroll down and it says, looking for a unicorn. So a unicorn is basically just like a third. And most of the time they'll go on like the women love women side of Tinder or dating apps and look for them there.
Wow.
But yeah.
There just needs to be your own app for that, for like swingers and people looking for a third, that type of thing, which I don't know if that's already out there or not, but if not, somebody. It's a great idea.
Me. I'll make it.
Actually, we're going to cut that out so you can have your $1 million idea.
No, I probably won't do it. So, but hey, if you need help making it, let me know. But yeah, so I was just baffled by that. It's like, and yeah, dating these days is just horrid. You're lucky you got out when you did.
Got me a good one.
You got your forever fish.
Don't worry, we're gonna find you the right one.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll be in Lubbock though.
Should we do a podcast segment of like speed dating?
Just going on the road. We'll go on the streets.
Do you want to go on a date? Yes or no?
That'd be funny.
That is insane though. Ain't no way.
That is crazy.
That's very financially irresponsible, actually.
I know.
Since we're on, finance topic.
Yeah. And I already pay for like a bunch of subscriptions, so I definitely do not need to add Tinder Plus to my subscription list.
But if they had an Affirm option for this, I bet you would be all over it.
I love Affirm, okay?
$2 a day? Sign me up.
Yeah. Affirm is good, okay? I saw this thing on TikTok. This lady was like, oh, I bought it with Affirm, so it's like girl math. It doesn't count.
That's you. That is you.
Me and Affirm we have our issues, but we get through it.
See, I can't do stuff like that because I know when that next paycheck comes, I'm not going to have money to pay that. I just know that about myself. So. Yeah.
Well, I have since we kind of just pivoted just talking about bills and stuff. But like, how do you track your bills? Like, let me tell you how I do mine first.
Okay.
So I write all of my bills down.
Okay.
On a piece of paper for the month for the next like 3 checks.
Okay.
I'll write out everything I need to pay, including my rent. I'll split it between my 2 checks I get a month.
Okay.
And then I will write down how much I have left from those checks. So I'll know how much like spendable income I have for that month. How do you do yours?
So when I got paid on a bi-weekly schedule like that, I would split it up, like rent is going to be half from this one, half from the next one. I'll pay the bills that are due like the first half of the month with that first one, second half of the month with that second check. But now it's a little different because I work for myself and I make money every day. So I kind of wait till the end of every week.
Yeah.
So by Saturday, and every month I have like a calendar of what day everything is due. And so each like Saturday, Sunday, whatever, I'll pay my booth rent, and then whatever I have left, I'll divvy it up to whatever's most important. So like if my electric's due that week, I'll pay that, and then I'll take like a chunk out for my mortgage, and it's just different.
Yeah.
I feel like I had to acclimate a little bit when I started working for myself.
Yeah, because I honestly, I sometimes forget that. I mean, I know you work for yourself, but I forget like how different it could be to like have to do finances that way.
Yes.
Because when I used to do like, when I was in school, I just mainly did like DoorDash and like Instacart, and I would have to do the same thing, and it would be like, yeah, tricky to do because I'd forget.
I don't know which one I prefer though. I think it is nice to be able to pay bills like at once like that. That's kind of nice, but it is nice, you know, if you're like, I'm broke and I don't know how I'm going to get groceries. I just have to go work. And then I'm like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So that part is kind of nice.
Yeah. I can see that. All right. So now that we've kind of talked about that, let's get into our main topic today.
Yes.
Which is the anatomy of lies.
Yes.
You want to start us off with that?
Yes. So I'm going to start with our main character, Elizabeth Finch. That's her name. Elizabeth, yeah?
Elizabeth
okay.
Finch.
Yeah. Elizabeth Finch. So she is mostly known for her being an executive writer. That's the correct term, right? On the Grey's Anatomy show that we all know and love. Actually, most of us love. I don't know about everybody, but I love it. But in the beginning of the show, they go off of a list of some other big shows that she had been affiliated with and had wrote for. Some of the bigger known ones being, I believe it was True Blood and Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
And so those were the top three that I really, knew the names of
Same.
or whatever. But that just goes to show she did have some like notoriety. Like good writer, pretty well known.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth is, I don't even know where to start because it kind of is like when we talked about the Mormon wives. It kind of like jumps back and forth a little bit.
Well, we don't necessarily have to like go through like in order. We can kind of just like give a background and then talk about like everything.
Sure.
If you want.
Yeah, I was just going down my little list. I took some notes because there's so much to cover. One thing I did find really interesting, well, I feel like where a lot of this kind of started was with the shooting of the synagogue in Pittsburgh. So, I think, no, scratch that. Sorry, guys. This is where I'm going to start. So she was working at Grey's Anatomy, and she had told everybody that she was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
Specifically, what was it?
Carcinogen. I don't remember.
Does not matter. Sorry.
Some sort of cancer. Just
but
fine.
Everyone thought she had cancer. Yeah. And going back and looking at like photos, videos during this time, she did look like she was a cancer patient. Yeah. She looked very sickly. Her hair was gone.
She wore a band, like scarf over her head.
Yeah, and it would make sense why nobody questioned her about it because she genuinely did look sickly. So that goes on for a while. But that goes back to where I was going to say the shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So, but before that, there was a point where she was going to get fired from the show.
Yes.
And they didn't fire her because they're like, we can't fire somebody with cancer.
Right.
And so that was like a prerequisite to what you're about to say.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that was pretty crazy.
Yes. I forgot about that. So then the shooting happens and she immediately leaves work and was like, I have to go I knew somebody, one of my friends was a victim that passed, and I guess within Judaism, the bodies, it's not the typical process that, people from other religions go about with the body. So they have to be, I believe, buried within a day, maybe 2 days, something like that. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a faster process than like a typical burial situation. So she tells everyone, like, I'm going out to deal with that, to be with, my people, whatever. And so nobody questions her, right? That's pretty heavy. Nobody wants to speculate, whatever. So around the same time, the Me Too movement was kind of going on, and she had made a post, I believe, that, stating she was a part of this movement or whatever. And after that, that's kind of when Joe Wilson's character on Grey's Anatomy kind of, I think, really took off. I think she was already on the show previous to this. But I believe her character is, like, Finch started taking on writing for her character more so around this time.
She, like, really got into it. And, like, they were saying she was, like, it almost seemed like one of the other writers said, like, she had a crush on her, or, like, it seemed like that. That's how, like, infatuated with this character she was. Like, how she I think at one point she even said she's, like, feels like her.
Yes.
Like, yeah, so
she really, got into this character a ton. So there is another writer on the show, and her and Finch, were kind of close. They would, talk as friends. They would talk about, like, stuff going on in their lives, family stuff, all the things. And at one point, this other writer let her know, or, confided in her, her background story. And this writer, her mother was a victim of rape, and that is how she was conceived, and that's how she got here. Which, if you are familiar with Grey's Anatomy and Joe's character, that is Joe's origin story. So after she discloses this information with Finch turns around and she writes this into Joe's character story. And at this point, Finch was above this other writer in their workspace. And so the other writer did not feel comfortable, trying to say, hey, that's my story. Like, I don't understand why you took my story and, like, ran with it, and you didn't even, like, discuss it with me. But she said that she was nervous to bring that up because, she was higher position than her. Yeah. And, she was getting so much success and notoriety from the story, going along with this Me Too moment at the time. Yeah. So she just didn't say anything. But her stealing people's trauma stories kind of becomes her MO. And that's another thing that, like, goes on throughout the show.
Yeah. And turns out, so, like, at the end of the first episode, actually at the end of all of the episodes, it kind of, like, gives you a little disclaimer and where Finch and the actor, I believe it was the actor who played Joe, says that they stole it from this other trial that they had seen.
Yes. Or
something like that, but
there's lots of little
caveats, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Throughout the show of things that were basically taken from other stories and stuff.
Yeah. So, but that was just really crazy. Because after this and after that, she gets an award.
Yes.
For this episode. She's in the episode. You actually see her
front and center,
wheeling the patient out.
Yes.
They have all the writers and women on staff, like, go in and be in the hallway when they're wheeling this patient through in that specific episode. It's just crazy. And this poor other writer whose story, I mean, they can say they got it from the trial, but the way the doc makes it seem, it definitely looks like she stole it from her.
Yes.
And based off of her MO, it does look like that's probably what happened.
And as we get farther into the story, that's absolutely what happened. So we've kind of, analyzed Joe's character at this point. So if you watch the show, there is a point after this, where Jo is kind of having a crisis with herself about all of that information that was just thrown at her. And she, goes through a really heavy, hard time, very dark, depressive episode, I would say. Mm-hmm. And so she checks herself into a inpatient treatment facility to work on her trauma. Yeah. So right after this episode is written, our Elizabeth Finch checks herself into an in-treatment facility, and she tells all her coworkers that she has PTSD from the synagogue shooting. Yeah. Even though she was not there, she says that it just triggers her and she gets nervous. So she checks herself in for extreme PTSD. And when she gets to the treatment center, she checks herself in under the name Jo. Yeah. So the people we see at the treatment center who come on the documentary and, kind of talk about what they experienced with her while they were in treatment with her, they did not know her real name. They did not know where she worked, what she did. They just knew her as Jo. Yeah. And some people were saying, I bet I just thought because she was a writer, she just wanted to keep her identity private. So nobody really thought that was too weird until one of her other writers comes to visit her. And she said, when you get here, I'm under the name Jo. And so she thought that was a little weird. So that's kind of, I think, when the writers were a little eyebrow raise.
Mm-hmm. And in this, I'm sure you're about to get into it, but she meets her future wife, Jin.
Yes. So a little bit of Jin's background story. Jin is a mother of 5, and she was in a very abusive domestic relationship. And she, I guess, just snapped one day. Essentially, she
lost her shit.
Yeah, she pretty much just lost her shit.
Had a mental breakdown because she was being mentally and physically abused by her husband. They show you pictures in the documentary. She kind of goes into it, and this guy is still harassing her while she's in treatment. Mm-hmm. At this point, he has custody of the kids, and I don't know if you wrote this down. Am I making this up? But didn't she have to go there in order for her to be able to try to get her kids back?
I don't know if she had to go there. I think I don't know about that detail, honestly, but she went to the treatment center. Yeah. She did later on. We'll get into that. Actually, we're going to get there. Sorry. So, Finch and Jen kind of become friends. Jen is very guarded at this time, doesn't really want to talk, very triggered easily. And so her and Finch would go on these walks, and Finch would just, stand with her, be with her, didn't force her to talk about anything. So she started to feel comfortable with her, which is a really big deal. She's in an extremely vulnerable state, extremely sensitive to things. And so she thought, wow, this person really cares about me. This person's being really kind to me. This feels very safe. And she was not used to that. So that's kind of, how they got started off with their relationship. Mm-hmm. As time in treatment goes on for both of them, Finch would ask her lots of details, lots of questions about her life, but Jin had pointed out that she didn't really know too much about Finch's life, and she thought that was a little odd, and she wanted to know, ins and outs of her therapy sessions and stuff like that, which she thought was weird, but she just kind of brushed it off or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I believe Finch gets out before Jen. Is that correct?
She does, but before she gets out, she does talk to her. There's one thing she does disclose, and a couple other things happen. So I don't know if you were about to touch on those, or
yeah.
Okay, so I'll let you touch on them then. But because I don't, it's just kind of hard because I don't know what you wrote down, and I have things I could go over too, but I don't want to take over your notes.
No, you're good. No, what did happen before she left? Because I was just going to go into
after
when she left and told her who she was.
So before she leaves, she does disclose to Jen that her brother hit her, was abusive towards her. Mm-hmm. And at one point, her parents come to visit, and she basically trauma dumps this information about her brother. Her parents are completely blindsided because they don't know what the heck's going on. Mm-hmm. She's just doing this in front of this whole group of people with her parents there.
Yes.
So that is the one thing that she does disclose to Jen, is like why she is, another reason, I guess, for her PTSD, other than like the synagogue thing. So that was like a big thing, and that comes into play again further down the line. So that's why I kind of wanted to make sure we brought that in there.
No, you're so right. I totally forgot when that came up. So that happens, and then Finch leaves treatment first. And when she's about to leave, she says something weird to Jen. I don't remember exactly what she said, but she basically wrote on a card her name and that she worked for Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think Jen at the time put two and two together, like the weirdness of that. But she was just kind of like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Like, I bet that's why, you know, she was going by this name, blah, 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 whatever. So, I guess later on, Jen ends up leaving treatment after Finch. And a little while later, Finch reaches out to Jen and starts calling her. And that phone call, like the voicemail they played, I wanted to throw up. It was just so cringy. It was weird.
Yeah, it was really cringy. She just seems so fake. Even some of the videos that the show later on in the doc are just so, like, she's so cringy. I'll just go with that word.
Yeah, extremely cringy. It does make sense why Jen would fall for this, though. Like I said, extremely vulnerable state. And I'm sure she just liked someone being nice to her. You know, it's very drastic from what she went to. So they're talking, they're in communication, and after, I think, a few weeks, I'm not sure the timeline, Finch flies Jen out to LA because she's like, it's a safe space, you know, I'm going to make sure he's not going to find you, you know, we're just going to have a good time. We're going to have a girls' weekend, like, it'll be fun. So she agrees to go. Everything goes great on this weekend. I believe some of Jen's friends do meet Finch on this trip. Is that correct?
I don't think it's on this trip. It's a little, it's when Finch goes to Kansas that she meets her friends.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Everything goes good on this trip, though, and they are starting to get closer and closer, and I believe it's on this trip, or maybe it was the Kansas trip, that she realizes she is in love with Finch.
Yeah. Well, because I think before it was strictly platonic, and then I think the LA trip is when they start getting, like, more romantically involved, and like, yeah.
Yeah. So after the LA trip, I don't know if she was driving back to Kansas or what was going on exactly, but Jen gets a phone call. And like we said earlier, she did not have custody of her kids at this time. I believe they were in foster care. Is that correct?
So, no. The kids were with the dad, I believe. Or were they in foster care?
That part was a little fuzzy for me.
Yeah, because to me it seems like the kids were with the dad.
I want to say the kids, when they interviewed the two oldest ones, they said that they were in foster care.
Okay.
For a little bit.
Yeah, because I feel like they kind of glazed over that because I didn't really...
Maybe they didn't want to like focus too much on it because it wasn't like the whole base of the story. But either way, Jen did not have custody of her kids at this time. So Jen gets a call from, I believe it was a police officer of the state, something like that.
Well, it's she goes to LA, then Elizabeth goes to Kansas. That's when she meets her friends, and they're like, "Oh, we're together now," like, and they're together. Yeah. Well, Jen is still in Kansas. Something's going on where she's starting to have a rough time again.
Okay.
I think it's the husband's like keeps messing with her, like threatening her.
Yeah, that's what it was. And he sent pictures from the safe house. Sorry.
Yes, she's living in a safe house. He sends pictures outside the safe house. So Finch is like, okay, well, let me fly you back to LA. So she goes back to LA, and when she gets in LA, I'll let you finish that, but that's when
the incident occurs, right? Okay, so that is when Jen receives the call from, I don't know if it's a police officer, someone who has to do with her, like, CPS case, whatever. But they're like, we need you to get to Kansas immediately. So she's freaking out because she doesn't have her kids at this point. So they refuse to tell her over the phone. So she's immediately like, something happened to my kids. One of my kids died. So she's panicking. So she's on the drive over there, and she basically tells them, I need you to tell me why I'm coming down here, whatever. And that is when the person discloses that her ex-husband had committed suicide. Yeah. And so she gets to Kansas. The schools let her kids know what happened, and they allowed her to stay with her. Allowed the kids to stay with Jen for a few days, I believe, right?
I think because they went to, I think they may have been in LA, right? With
I think so.
Finch, because I think they're at like her apartment. Yeah, so they're there. The kids are like enjoying it. They're like really into this. Like they think it's kind of weird because they haven't been together too long, but they seem really close.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids overall, they've not been adapted to this type of relationship in so long because of the relationship that their parents had, and they were so used to having that. So this Finch being there and being so welcoming and open and being like, oh, your father just died, so anything you want, your wish is like my command, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They're just in awe of her because of this reason, and that's when they start working to try and get the kids back permanently.
Yes. I don't know the exact timeline of what happened, but they essentially, the house that Jen and her ex-husband were living in, she goes, and after, I don't know if he killed himself in the house.
I don't know. They didn't touch on that either, I don't think.
They did leave out a decent amount of information on that, like we said. But essentially, she fixes up the house they had together. It was trashed, but they decide that's going to be our best option for all of these kids and us. And I don't think they had even talked about moving in together at this point yet, right?
No. Because, well, too, after he trashed the house, Finch helps set up like a GoFundMe or like a fundraiser to raise money for them to redo the house. And they like, one of her kids is like really into ballet, this boy. And so like they build him like almost like, what is that, American Home Makeover show or whatever? You know what I mean? Sort of. That's what it kind of felt like. Yeah, that move that bus. That's what it kind of felt like. So yeah, they redo the house, and then nobody in the writer staff even knows who this girl. They just know who Jen is. Because Finch has not said that they're together to anybody at this point. Mm-mm. And so Jen even mentions like not being able to take certain pictures or like do things like that. Mm-hmm. But I think that was mostly for the cancer purpose, which we'll get into later, Brett.
Yes.
Yeah, so the writers, it goes to the part where they're like, oh yeah, we were thinking, oh, Finch is so nice because she's raising money for domestic violence. She's raising money for this. Well, it's such a good cause. And then all of a sudden, Finch is like, okay, I'm moving to Kansas. And everybody's like, yeah, what? What's going on? But that's when COVID happens.
Yes. I believe she got to Kansas first and then COVID happened. Is that correct?
I want to say the reason
she went was
because of COVID.
Okay.
Because I don't think she would have left LA if she was riding in person. Like in the room, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the reason she left was because of COVID. And she thought, if I'm going to work remote, then I might as well work remote with, my family.
I think around this time is when she announced that she would be taking a step back from writing from Grey's Anatomy, because her and one of the executive writers, they were going to go off on their own and make their own show, which was kind of based around Jen's oldest son, the ballet dancer who we talked about. Do you remember that?
No, I don't. Wow, I completely missed that part.
They didn't go too much into detail about that, but I had written that down because I thought that was really creepy.
Ooh, okay, so we did glaze over one part.
Okay.
So we mentioned before that Finch had said that her brother was abusive to her. Well, when she jets off to Kansas for the first time, I believe, or when she's trying to go help, when her husband commits suicide, Finch tells everybody at work that her brother committed suicide.
You're so right. Yeah. I totally forgot about that.
So that's the reason she goes to Kansas to help and be there for Jen, but she's lying to everybody back home and saying that she went because her brother committed suicide.
Yes. So, and how did they... There's so much to this. But yes, that did happen.
Yeah.
So where were we? We said they were living together at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did they get engaged before this or after? I think they got engaged before that. No. I wrote when they moved in.
Yeah, you can go ahead and go look at your notes because everything gets a little fuzzy.
Okay. No, that's the answer to that. So, Liz. Or Finch, I wrote Liz in my notes, but Finch proposes to Jen about 4 weeks after she moved in with the kids.
Okay.
Something
Yes.
like that. So they did move in together first. And then Finch proposes to Jen. And I don't know how long they were engaged for, but they did eventually get married. They got married on the beach. And they had their little matching Cartier rings.
They almost
And so
drowned.
that kind of goes into the beginning of the end, don't you think?
Yeah, the beginning of the end.
Yeah, so right after the wedding, I feel like, and they moved in together, you know, I'm sure it's hard to keep the mask up when you're living with somebody like that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where the beginning of the end starts. So this goes back to something that was brought up earlier in the show, but it was kind of hard to bring it up until now. So Finch had said earlier on that she had kidney issues and said that one of the actresses, I believe it was an actress, not a writer, but anyway, from the Vampire Diaries show that she was a part of, had given her a kidney, but she didn't really like to talk about it, and she didn't want anybody asking this actress about it.
Anna Paquin.
Yes, because she didn't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
So Jenna knew about that, and during this time, what was it? Finch said, "I'm nervous. I feel like I might have a kidney stone, and that's really bad. You know, since I got this kidney transplant or whatever." Or I don't know if she said she got the kidney transplant or she only had one kidney.
She didn't bring that part up. That was Jen who had brought that up.
Okay.
Jen was like, well, because Finch was trying to just blow it off and not have to go to the hospital or the doctor. Or she was saying like, oh, you don't need to come with me. Like, I can go by myself.
Yes.
And Jen, who's a nurse, was like, no, like, you only have one kidney. This could be really serious. I'm going to go with you. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they end up at the doctor and they take her in for testing. And they put her in like the MRI machine or the whatever the machine is.
Yeah.
And the doctor, she's still in there. The doctor comes and tells Jen, you know, because obviously she's a wife, gives her an update. And he's like, yeah, both of her kidneys are fine. And she's kind of like, what?
So that's when Jen kind of first starts to pick up on the lies. Was the whole kidney ordeal. Mm-hmm. So after this, okay, I thought they got married before. After she finds that out, Jen doesn't want to freak out too much because she thought, you know, this is a really good person. They care for me. They take care of me, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah. So Jen does decide to go ahead with the wedding. And so after that incident is when they get married.
Gotcha.
So after that, you know, their honeymoon phase doesn't last very long. That's when COVID began, I think, is after they got married is kind of when COVID kicked off, I believe.
That would make sense because they were living and doing stuff before then. And yeah, okay.
So that's when things start getting a little dark. You know, Jen just keeps saying that Finch is very distant from the family and she's always working. I did find it interesting that she like rented out a space like across the street so she could go work all day. Yeah. And, you know, like I said earlier, the kids were being interviewed. Her grown kids were being interviewed for this. So they said, you know, she wasn't home a lot, like very, like it started getting to where she was home less and less and less. Yeah. And she just seemed very depressed. And another thing that people throughout the show kept mentioning was that she always said she never wanted kids. Yeah. And so everyone was like, that's a little odd why you're with this person that has 5 children if you never wanted any.
Yeah. I thought that was a little weird too, but they didn't mention that till the end, so we don't know that till. But yeah, that is strange. And she genuinely, like in the videos we see, seems happy with these kids.
Yeah, I mean, she seemed like she was great with the kids. I'm sure, you know, there were moments or whatever, but up until the end, she seemed like she was pretty good with the kids. And the kids did say, like, they liked her. So everything was good there. I do believe she probably did love the kids.
Yeah, for sure.
So Jen, at this point, starts catching on some more lies.
So one of the big, because she does deep dive, she starts going back in her social media. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the big things that kind of clicks in her head at first is that if she had cancer and she was going through chemo, and you even see in some of the pictures, she has like the port on her chest. Yeah. And Jen goes into explaining like when you put the chemo port, that there's usually a little scar there. Mm-hmm. And Finch has no scar anywhere on her chest. And this is where she brings up what I talked about earlier, where she's like, oh, she didn't want you to take pictures at certain times, or she didn't want you to take pictures at certain angles. And she's like, now it makes sense because she'd never had the scar for the chemo.
Yes. And when she's doing this deep dive through the socials, she also finds out the day of the shooting that she said she was in Pittsburgh. She was at a Halloween party. And I thought that was a very like clumsy move on her part. Like, if you are in this giant lie for like years and years and years, why would you post something like that?
But also, how did nobody else catch that?
Yes.
That was my thing. I'm a nosy bitch.
Yes.
I'm all over everybody's Facebook. I'm like, you haven't posted your boyfriend in a while, but you be posting every day? You must have broke up. Let me go deep dive a little bit. Like, I'm a deep diver, okay?
We're checking the Venmo transactions.
Right?
Like, all the things. Like, nobody noticed and y'all work in, like, media?
I know. Like, that's just so crazy to me. But maybe they weren't Facebook friends because, like, she was, like, a head producer and, like, the rest of the... Like...
Yeah, maybe they, like, work in social separate.
Yeah.
But I thought that was insane. So she just starts deep diving and finding all these secrets online. So how did she confront her about this?
So she takes her away from the kids. And she asks her, like, hey, you don't have cancer, or something along the lines of that. And Finch is like, I don't now, but I did have cancer. And Jen keeps repeating, you don't have cancer. Like, she's just like saying, hey, I know, shut up. Like, she didn't say that, but like, that's essentially what she's getting at. Like, we know the gig's up, like, give it up.
Yeah.
So she's like, she eventually is like, yeah, I didn't have cancer. And then she kind of goes into like this whole spiel of like how she's lying because of the trauma from her brother. And like, I guess it's kind of like her coping mechanism or something like that. And she just does this whole thing. So, I think Finch at this point, they're still living together after she gets confronted, but they sleep separately maybe, or
I think things are very tense at this point, but they're still living together. And I think at this point Jen kind of wanted to fix things a little bit, but that's when shit starts getting even worse. So I think after that they decide they're gonna go to like couples counseling, I believe. Right? Okay.
But I think before that, there's this one, because right after, but when they're at the beach, because they're at the beach talking, and this is where Jen is confronting Finch. Jen starts, first of all, I want to take this back for a second, because not to downplay mental health or anything, but these poor children, and this is not the mom's fault. I'm not blaming the mom. Just because your mom doesn't mean you do not have mental health issues. Completely valid. But the whole time I'm thinking about these poor kids and how they're having to deal with, their mother in these situations and like her breakdowns and stuff. And I don't want to sound insensitive because that's not what I'm trying to do at all. I understand. But that can be mentally taxing for people who are around that all the time, especially children. Yeah. Like those adult children, especially, who have to now take care of their, younger siblings. And it just kind of, and this is not the mom's fault. Mental health issues are very serious, and that's like a thing that is very prevalent in our world. And unfortunately, moms sometimes are seen as people who don't have
they're not allowed to feel.
Yeah, they're not allowed to feel.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to like say that at all, because she definitely should have her feelings, but she has big feelings and big episodes like this. So at this point, she's having one of those episodes, and she gets off the car and she calls her therapist.
Yes.
Oh, and this part pissed me
off. Irate.
I was upset. So she calls her therapist, and one of her biggest fears is because with her ex-husband, she was so gaslit and he made people think she was crazy. And so now she's afraid because she has Finch, who's this prominent writer.
Who's actually crazy,
like you said. And she's like, if I tell people this, they're not going to believe me. They're going to think I'm crazy again. And then I'm going to get my kids taken away and all this other stuff. So she calls her therapist. She's like talking to her. Her therapist is like, is somebody there with you? Blah, blah, blah. Like making sure she's okay. Well, I think she like calms down. They talk again. And she's like, as long as you start coming clean, like we can work on things and stuff like that. Well, at some point, there's like another catalyst of something happen. I don't remember if she like finds out another lie or she realizes that she's not going to tell anybody, so she confronts Finch again, and Finch was like, I gotta blow off steam or I gotta go somewhere, and she calls Jin's therapist and essentially steals her therapist. Her therapist drops Jin and takes on Finch. How fucked up is that? That pissed me off.
What's more fucked up about that is that I'm sure she would have done this anyway, but Jin's therapist was court appointed, and that was a term for her to keep custody of her children, was to prove that she was going to therapy and doing all the things and staying on the straight and narrow. And so for her to do that, she put her in a position to where she could possibly lose her kids, which is one of her biggest fears. Yeah. And not only does she steal her therapist, she starts to turn Jin's friends against her. And she's texting them behind her back, and all her friends are turning against Jin and being like, she's just crazy. I'm so glad the kids have you. You know, they need like a stable parent, So Jin's even more isolated at this point, and so her fears of losing her kids are more validated at this point.
Yeah. And Jin even leaves at one point, and she's like, her kids are like, well, mom's on another one of her, like, you know, episodes. She's having an episode. And Finch steps in and takes care of the kids, and she's like being there for like fully taking on the mom role, this person who supposedly never wanted kids.
Well, doesn't Jin, I forgot about that, go back to treatment after that? Like, she loses her therapist, I believe, right?
Yes. Yeah, she does go back to treat. Yeah, you're right. She goes back to treatment for a little while. And during this time, too, speaking of people turning on her, even the writers who were not necessarily close to the situation, but they, from the outside perspective, were like, oh, poor Finch, this Jin girl is crazy and like doing all this stuff to her. And exactly what Jin knew what would happen, that poor girl.
Yes.
And then after she gets out of her second treatment for what we just talked about, is when she decides to write the head writer of Grey's Anatomy and spill the beans on everything that she found out.
Yes. So I think once she got out of treatment the second time, they decided to go to a more intense couples therapy. Right. Which, no. That segues into what you were saying. They go and do a more intense couples therapy. And during this, Finch is, being pretty honest with Jen, but she does reveal at this point that her brother did not do any of those things. She says,
No, I thought that was the one thing that her brother did not go, or that's the one lie that she did not take back, is about her brother.
No, because Jen said something that was like, so what did your brother do to you or whatever? And she was like, well, he would steal the remote from me, or
you're right. Yeah.
Typical sibling stuff. So Jen was like, that was a lie too. So I think after treatment, while they're at this treatment, Finch promises, when we get back, I'm going to tell people. They get back. Obviously, she doesn't do it. And so because she didn't send that email until after they had moved out, right?
Yeah, well, I think Finch is the one that moved out because that was their house all along.
No, that's right. Okay, so I don't remember exactly when this happened, but I think the oldest daughter talked to Jen, and Jen finally discloses to her, like, hey, no. It's so confusing. Basically, Jen is like, if we're going to work this out, you need to tell everyone and you need to be honest. And that includes the kids. So Finch gets home and she texts Jen, like, what do I say to her? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, be honest. And so that's when Finch discloses to the eldest daughter everything that's been going on. So rightfully so, the eldest daughter gets pissed off and she says, you will never be my mom.
Yeah.
So Finch gets very offended by that, immediately packs up her stuff, texts Jen and says, I want a divorce. We're done. And that's when they move out, correct?
I don't even, I must have missed that whole part.
I believe that's what happened.
That's probably, I don't doubt you. That's probably what happened. I was working when I watched it, so I could have missed some spots.
But I think that's why earlier I had said, I think that Finch, even if she didn't want kids, she really did love those kids. Yeah. And so I think when she said that to her, that like broke her heart, that she didn't love her. And so that's when she's like, whatever, we're going to get divorced and I'm moving out. So Finch goes back to LA.
Oh, you know what? You're right, because I remember the part where the daughter's like, my mom doesn't usually lie to me, and I could tell she was lying about something, and that's when the daughter gets it out of her.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
So Finch moves back to LA. Well, then she starts telling all her writer friends, Jen is crazy and blah, 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 blah. And so they take Finch's side. And like you were saying earlier, like, oh, yeah, she was in this facility. That's where y'all met. And she needed someone to help take care of her kids. I bet that's what happened to her ex-husband, is she drove him to that. So everyone's taking Finch's side once again. And I think Jen just got tired of it.
Yeah.
And so when Jen was doing that deep dive earlier that we talked about, she had gotten Shonda Rhimes, the main writer or producer of Grey's Anatomy. She got her email. And so Jen decides, I'm going to send this Hail Mary and I'm going to email her everything. And I got all the receipts from that deep dive I did back in the day. So I'm going to attach that in this email and I'm going to send it. And I don't know if anything's going to happen, but we're going to go for it. Okay. And that is when things start falling apart for Finch.
Yeah. Because that's when like the media starts picking things up, right?
Yes, because I think maybe it was a couple of days after the email was sent, it was somebody else, one of her coworkers, comes into the other writer's room and Finch isn't there. And she's like, I can't tell you details or specifics right now, but once you find this out, you're going to shit your pants, basically. Like, you're going to be so shook. And they were like, what? Like, you can't leave us like that. And she's like, I can't tell you everything, but Finch does not have cancer. So she let her know everything. So that's, I believe, when the media articles start coming out, is after that. Another thing that happened before this that I forgot to mention was Jen was with Finch and her parents after she had found out, this stuff was lies or whatever. And the parents are pleading with Finch, like, knock it off. Like, why are you lying about all this stuff? So the parents were aware that all this crazy stuff was happening. Yeah. So when these media articles come out, she also finds out, the lies that were told about the brother. The writers find out that none of that was true. And that her brother is a doctor and he lives in Florida and he's still alive. And the parents and the brother both opted to not comment on the story.
This whole thing in general is just so crazy.
Bizarre.
Could you imagine like having a sibling who like lied about you like that? Like, how much do you have to hate your sibling to do that?
I don't know the dynamics of the relationship. She probably does hate him, but I don't know if it's necessarily even that. I just think she gets off on this attention so much. Like, she doesn't care who she's lying about because she just has to lie and fabricate things so people will believe her off the wall stories.
And I get so writers in general can be that you have to be a good writer, you have to have something, I mean,
a little off.
Yeah, a little off.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to, but I mean, most good writers kind of have some quirks.
Well, even some of the writers in the documentary like kind of touched on that. They're like, I mean, we're storytellers, so like, we can go off on tangents a little bit like that. So,
and they were even saying like at the end of the documentary, like, this doesn't mean she'll never get work again because this is what Hollywood looks for. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's true. Like,
and like, I mean, she hurt people, but like technically she didn't like do anything that she could get like arrested for. Yeah, like she could go on and live a normal life after this. But what I just found so crazy was they said somewhere in the documentary that writers could make like $40,000 an episode, and we all know how long Grey's Anatomy has been on. She had everything.
She still probably does. I mean, she didn't. When it came to her job, it's not like she, like we just talked about, did anything bad, so they're not going to take any of that money back.
Right.
She didn't steal. She didn't do anything like that. I mean, the only thing she stole was ideas, which unfortunately that's not illegal.
Right. That's Hollywood, I'm sure.
That is, you hear so many stories of like, even like songs being stolen by other people, or like that shit just happens in Hollywood.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps that up. If y'all haven't seen it, you need to go watch it. It's absolutely insane.
My jaw was dropped. Like the first episode, I remember just being there like, What the, like, it was crazy. And the way she fakes her cancer, we did not really touch on that, like, too in depth, but when you watch it, you'll just see it's crazy.
Like, it was very believable that she looked sick. That was one thing that we were texting about when we were watching this was, how did she look so sickly? Like, what did she do? I remember one of the people in the documentary said she looked like she's fresh out the microwave. Like, that cracked me up.
Yeah, but, like, it also did kind of look like she put green makeup on or something, like, under at some points. Like, so, I mean, I think she was just really good at makeup. She's really good at lying. But I think she even said at one point, it's hard to keep all the lies straight sometimes. Like, because how could you, like, that's so many lies, so many things. You gotta be, that's crazy.
I believe, because didn't they, like, Grey's Anatomy let her go, and then she's like, I'm gonna beat y'all to the punch, and she put out an article saying she chose to leave, so that kind of pissed everybody off because they'd put up with this for so long, and then she just spun yet again another story to make herself look good.
Yeah. Yep. And then I think the only one thing she ever released was that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she kind of touched on it. Or she had an interview with somebody and she was like, yeah, I effed up. And she said something along the lines of, in all the words or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was so weird because it's so fake. It's just so fake. She's not sorry about anything, which, I mean,
people like that aren't sorry for anything. No. Like, it's a mental disorder. Like, some screws are loose. Like, something's not right up there.
And to me, with, like, the whole Jen situation, I could see her, like, wanting to have, like, the savior complex and be, like, the hero to those kids and be, like, maybe that's why she was okay with being with somebody with 5 kids.
Right. Which, I mean, their whole relationship was built on lies from the moment they met each other. It was in a lie, you know, and I guess she wouldn't have met Jen if she hadn't been lying, but I just feel like she could have, if she genuinely did love Jen, which at first I did think she did. I don't know. Do you think so?
I think she did.
But they could have lived a great life, you know? Like, they had all this money. They had this little family. I don't know.
And she still would have had that money. Like, if she made $40,000 an episode, however long, she was on Grey's Anatomy for so long, right? She had to have, like, a good amount saved.
You'd think.
So, even if she came out, spoke her truth, but Jen even said, like, we can figure out the money thing. Like, I can get a job. Like, we can figure it out. She was fully willing to try and figure it out, but Finch just did not want to come clean.
Jen was a writer.
She was.
She was willing.
What would you have done? Like, would you have? First of all, I probably would have stayed because of the money. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, not me.
You okay? Well,
I'd rather be poor and happy than to be rich and have to live under someone's thumb. I will never do that.
Well, to me, it didn't seem like she was living under her thumb.
But tolerating lies.
But, like, if she came clean, that's what I'm saying. Like, if she had come clean.
To everyone, like the writers, everything, if she had done the right thing. Yeah. I think that's hard to say, I guess. It depends on how much you love them, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know if I could, though, because if you're willing to lie about all that, what the hell else are you going to... I will believe anything you say. And that's the one thing about relationships.
I didn't think about that.
If you don't trust your partner, you have nothing. You have no relationship.
Ooh, you know what? I guess I was so far... My feelings are so far removed. I was blinded by the money that I didn't even think about the trust part because that's such a big thing. I don't know how I missed that part because that's, like, the whole thing. But, like...
And, like, she did, like, come clean to her eventually, but not willingly. She had to drag that out of her. Yeah. And she wasn't, like, remorseful about it whatsoever. So, no, absolutely not. Because if you're allowing that person to also, like, help you raise your children, you are setting that precedent for your kids. Yeah. And I wouldn't want my kids to become pathological liars.
True. Very true.
So, no, I don't think I could. Yeah, I'd rather be a single parent to 5 kids than to fucking do that.
Yeah, when you put it that way, I agree with you. Same thing.
But I could see why some people would, you know, see the money and be like, I got these kids to feed. I could see both sides. Yeah. But me personally, no, I could not do that.
Yeah, I get that. But that's crazy. So I think that pretty much wraps that up.
That pretty much wraps it up. I think we touched on pretty much everything.
We were talking about this, and I don't know if we discussed this before. This has nothing to do with Anatomy of Lies, and we won't spend too much time because we've already been running a little late. But did you hear about that undercover sting that lasted 19 years?
Oh my God, yes. So what happened? Basically, the guy was an undercover agent. Is that correct?
And he like marries this girl. Like I think they had kids.
No,
right?
they had at least one.
Yeah.
I believe but 19 years and they had a family together.
And that just reminded me of this a little bit because like they were together and like the lies. And I'm like, could you imagine? Mm-mm. Oh, I'd be pissed. And then how do you just like, what do you do with the kid? Like, how is that even ethical?
Well, then I'm like, so were you in love and like you felt bad about it? It's giving low key 10 things I hate about you when it's like,
I never seen that.
What?
No, I've never seen that.
Is it 10 or is it 7? No, it's 10.
It's 10 things. I know. I know of it, but I've just never seen it.
So in the show, basically someone's like, I'll pay you to ask this girl out. And he's like, okay, whatever. Well, then he falls in love with the girl. And then she finds out that he only started dating her because he got paid to. And she gets pissed off. But it started under something shitty, but they fell in love.
There's a lot of movies like that. Because was that one with Freddie Prinze Jr. and where she's like a nerd and he gets Bet to like take her to prom or whatever.
We've seen the story be told over and over again, but I don't know. Surely you would have, I don't know. You'd have to be in love with someone to spend 20 years with them and to have all those kids. But at any point he could have been like, I'm done with this. I'm quitting. Like, I'm not going to give you anything. But also if they were married, was it legally married? Could he be like, I'm not testifying against this because that's my wife? Because there's rules for that.
Yeah, there is.
So I'm like, maybe he didn't love her. I don't know.
That's such a weird... Okay, we're going to have to look into this and we'll talk about it at some point. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because... And you guys should go look it up too.
Yes.
Because it reminded me of this, like, not completely at all, but like a tiny bit just because of the lies and the relationship and the marriage thing. But that was just baffling to me. Y'all need to go check it out.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some more information and we can like bring this back up and maybe we'll get some of y'all's opinions and we can put that in the next episode also.
Yep. But I think we'll go ahead and call it a day here.
Yes, thank y'all for tuning in to another episode. As always, make sure to go follow us, like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, all the things. And make sure y'all are commenting and letting us know what you thought of this episode. I really want to get y'all's input and see some other viewpoints. And I really hope y'all watch this because it was actually really good. It was really crazy.
Yeah, it was.
And I think another thing, just while we're wrapping this up, it makes you look at Grey's Anatomy a lot different. I definitely am like, oh, I thought that. Yeah. Anyway, so let us know what y'all think and I'll be interested to see what y'all have to say.
And if you have any topics or any like suggestions, anything, send them our way. We'll look into it and, see if we can add it in on an episode. We're always looking for ideas. There's only so many things that you can come up with yourself before you may need some help.
Yeah, so we would definitely love y'all's feedback.
For sure.
Yeah, so we will catch you fuckers next week for another episode of Who You've Nest.
Thanks for watching. Peace.